Hey, what's up YouTube? Wicked here, and as promised, here's a video on the free character that everyone should be receiving with the Labyrinth Warriors event, Xinyan. I will be going over her kit, her best sets, and team compositions in order to help you build her as efficiently as possible and to make the best out of this, in my opinion, pretty great character. As a side note, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe as that would really help my channel out and allow my guides to reach a lot more people. Now let's get into it. Xinyan is a Pyro Claymore character. Her best uses are as a defensive support unit that has some niche combinations with a few of the cast of characters. Now while I don't think she fits in every team, she does have some good team setups that really make her shine a bit more than others for specific conditions. To start with, her entire kit revolves around her elemental skill Sweeping Fervor. She essentially swings her greatsword dealing pyro damage to nearby enemies while forming a shield on herself which scales based on her defense stat. Depending on the amount of enemies hit, the stronger the shield gets. The shield has a total of 3 levels. First level is when hitting 0 or 1 opponent, level 2 when hitting 2 opponents, and level 3 when hitting 3 opponents. Now because of this, she is more useful versus a large number of mobs, as opposed to using her for bosses, as you won't really ever get level 3 if you're fighting a single target. Now thankfully, her first Ascension ability decreases the number of opponents required to activate the upgraded shields by 1, meaning you only need 2 targets to get a level 3 shield. Getting to level 3 is actually really important, and not only does it provide you with a much stronger shield, but a level 3 shield also grants it a pyro damage over time effect that lasts for the duration of the shield, which is 12 seconds. This is good when you want to swap out to provide other characters with the ability to trigger elemental reactions by themselves without needing to swap in a character to trigger it. Now there are 2 downsides to her ability. One is this ability's cooldown, which is 18 seconds, which is quite long, and this means that it's essentially impossible to keep up a permanent shield unless you get your hands on a sacrificial greatsword, which honestly isn't a bad idea. And secondly, the fact that the AoE is so small, which makes it very hard to hit multiple enemies unless they are fairly close or grouped up, which makes it somewhat difficult to be consistent with, which is quite troubling. Thankfully, this is somewhat alleviated when she obtains her second constellation, but we will go over that a bit later. Now her Elemental Burst Rift Revolution is a high multiplier damage AoE that applies a short pyro damage over time on use. It isn't much more useful than that when using her at C0. Now unfortunately, her burst doesn't scale off of defense as her elemental skill does, which puts her in a weird spot, as if you are trying to maximize her shield, you will be sacrificing damage off of her burst. So I wouldn't really worry about her burst unless you plan on using her as a sub DPS with a slightly weaker shield. And lastly, her utility passive gives her a 12% chance to obtain double the product when cooking a defense boosting dish of food. When it comes to her constellations, there are some constellations that really improve her quality of life and make her a much better support. Her C1 isn't anything special. It basically increases Xinyan's attack speed for normal and charge attacks by 12% for 5 seconds. You honestly won't be really auto-attacking with her much, so this is about as useless as it gets unless you decide to run her that way, which honestly you kinda shouldn't. Her C2 is actually very useful. Mine is the first part of it, which gives the physical damage portion of her burst a 100% crit chance. It lets her burst automatically grant her a level 3 shield, which is helpful in 2 situations. First being you miss your level 3 proc off of your elemental skill, or second, to keep your shield on rotation after your elemental skill has expired. What is also helpful is that there is no enemy requirement for her burst, meaning that this will still proc a level 3 shield in the case you want to use Xinyan during a boss or less than ideal enemy counts. Now I normally skip over C3 and C5 as these are the same for every character, but I want to note that having her C3 improves her shield, which is something to think about. The longer her shield lasts, the longer the DOT continues for the duration, so it's fairly important to keep this up if you can. Her C4 improves her support capabilities by decreasing the enemy's physical resistance by 15% for 12 seconds when they are hit by her elemental skill. This really adds to her kit and pushes her to fit into a team comp that is more focused on physical damage. Not only that, but this, combined with her second Ascension ability, obtained at level 70, which grants a 15% increase in physical damage to characters who are protected by her shield, further cements her into a position where she is highly valuable in a physical damage team comp. And lastly, her C-Sig doesn't really do much for her kit, it simply decreases the stamina consumption of her charge attack by 30% and grants an attack bonus equal to 50% of her defense, which, unless you are using her as a sub DPS or main DPS, won't be useful in the slightest. Moving on to her team builds, she's a very niche character. Thankfully though, she is a pyro unit, which adds even more to her usefulness. She is half the requirement needed for the pyro resonance, which will increase the team's attack right off the bat. This thankfully opens up her choices a little bit. Because of her second Ascension ability, which grants a 15% physical damage buff to anyone who's shielded by her, and if you are lucky enough to have her fourth constellation, which lowers enemies' physical resistance when hit, this really lets her zero in on fitting into and supporting a physical damage team. Using her as a support for someone like Razor, Rosaria, or even someone like a physical damage build Zhongli allows you to get the most effectiveness out of her. Then, combining her with someone like Bennett for an even stronger attack increase along with the heals, or Zhongling for an increase in support DPS allows you to complete the Pyro Resonance, which helps the entire team out greatly. Now, while you can use her for elemental reaction procs for other characters, if you have to fit anyone else into the mix, a Cryo or Hydro unit would probably be best to fill in the slot to get the most out of the procs. So in the end, something like Razor, Rosaria, Xinyan, and Bennett, or alternatively, Razor, Zhongling, Xinyan, and Kokomi would probably be your best comps. Now you could do something really unorthodox like physical damage Zhongli, Xingqiu, Xinyan, and Bennett. It really depends on what you have available to you, but ideally you want a physical damage main DPS and the rest can be filled how you see fit. Also, because she needs to hit multiple enemies to proc her elemental skill, having someone who can group these enemies up like Sucrose or Venti can really help make this much easier. When it comes to artifacts, same as her team comms, she doesn't have too much flexibility. Though, thankfully, if you are focused on her shielding capabilities, this opens up all those defense artifacts that you once believed to be garbage and lets you use them on her to turn her into a helpful support tank. Unfortunately, she doesn't entirely scale on defense though, so you will have to weigh your options to how strong of a shield you want, as well as how much damage you feel she will need. So something like a defense Sands, Pyro damage Goblet, and a crit rate or crit damage Circlet could be of help. Though if you don't care about her damage much, you could replace all of this with straight up defense main stats and call it a day. As for sets, she only has a few options useful to her, and sadly there are no artifact sets that grant an increase in defense other than Defender's Will, and while somewhat useful, this unfortunately falls off late game as there's no 5-star options for it. Because of this, you want to focus on something that offers a bit more support. Ideally, you would like something like Tenacity of the Millilith to further increase your team's damage as it will proc with the DOT from the elemental skill, as well as increasing your shield strength. Alternatively, if you aren't running Bennett with a Noblesse Oblige set, you can run down on her to make sure that she grants the attack buff to the party and buffs an already strong burst, though I would focus on adding a bit more damage to her kit if that's the route you want to take. Lastly, if you are running her in a pair with someone like Zhongli and are dead set on using her as a sub DPS, she does fairly well with a Retracing Bolide set, which not only increases her shield strength, but also increases her charge attack damage, which when combined with her 6 Constellation, really helps to push her damage limit when she's out on the field. I personally wouldn't recommend it, but I wouldn't be surprised if anyone did it and absolutely loved it. When it comes to her weapons, you have a few options. You can go for utility, such as Wolf's Gravestone, or improve her shield and attack with something like the Unforged, which unless you already have, isn't available at the moment. For more free-to-play or useful options, something to consider would be the Sacrificial Greatsword. While energy recharge isn't extremely necessary on her as her burst is only 60 cost, it does allow her the option to be able to reapply her shield easily after the first one is down, allowing an extended use of her shield. This can be useful in a number of situations and is something to think about when making your weapon selection for her. Alternatively, a craftable weapon, the White Blind, is something that's kind of built for her. It stacks defense, which helps her shield, and its proc grants a stackable attack and defense buff, which just entirely helps her kit out. Now this does push her into a fully focused support setup, as the defense main stat on the weapon really leaves very little options to increase her damage output outside of her weapon. If you're looking for more HP on a slightly more offensive build, you could use something like the Bell along with a Retracing Bolide set to help guarantee shield uptime for the artifact set's proc, as well as further increasing her damage when protected by a shield. And lastly, Prototype Archaic or Lithic Blade would be your more offensive options if you're looking to really deal out more damage with her. Overall, Xinyan isn't entirely useless. She does have her niche setups that can provide meaningful support under the right conditions. I did enjoy my time playing around with her, though with so many options out there, it's really hard to fully incorporate her into every team because of how niche she is. She does have an incredible unit design, which is something I really appreciate with her, and while I don't recommend her everywhere, with the right setup for her, she can be a great addition to your roster. Now unfortunately, with Tomo right around the corner and him being another Pyro Shield support 4-star, it will be hard to determine Xinyan's exact spot, though as it is, she's a great support addition to any physical DPS team. Either way, she's a free unit given out to everyone during the Labyrinth Warriors event, so it's at least worth to pick her up and let her rock out. And that's about it for the Xinyan guide. Do you plan on building her? Is there anything you would change on her, or if you have any other questions relating to her, leave a comment down below and I'll answer your questions to help out as much as possible. See you all in a future video.